Welcome to my channel. This is Nomadic J. This is part 2 of my 25 things I learned from traveling internationally. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell for the next video. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, I list 25 different things that I learned from traveling overseas. I'm going to go ahead and put the link below, and also hopefully I remember to put the link above so you can click on that if you want to see the other 25 things that I learned from traveling overseas. So let's get into it. Number 1, just understand that, in the U.S. we tend to cook pretty much with either natural gas or electric stove. In lots of parts of South America and even parts of Africa, which is where I've been, and even in some extent, even in Thailand, they use propane gas. And we're not talking about a big, gigantic tank outside the building. We're talking about just an individual tank for inside for the unit. I remember going to Playa del Carmen, and they assume that you know a lot about propane gas. Propane gas does not cook like natural gas. I mean, it's either, and depends on the systems operating off of, it can cook either high or super low. You can't really modulate the heat too much, with propane gas. I just remember, and sometimes they assume you know a lot about it when you go to a lot of these countries. Again, I was renting an Airbnb. There was no propane tank. I mean, I knew how to light it. That's another thing. You got to learn how to light those things because they don't all have electronic igniters. So I just remember going somewhere and I didn't have a tank for my stove. I contacted the host. He said that they have one later on. I thought they were going to bring one and install it. They didn't. They knocked on my door. No, they didn't knock on my door. I just happened to walk out the door and saw the tank right outside the door. I did not know how to connect one up. I could have guessed, but I didn't know, and I didn't want to trust myself. So obviously I contacted the host and said, okay, I appreciate you bringing it over, but I don't know how to hook this thing up correctly. So please send someone over. Obviously that couldn't happen to the next day. So that just understand you're going to get in a situation like that and understand you're going to have a propane tank. The next thing, you got to learn to be spontaneous. I mean, you may have a rigid plan, but travel teaches you have to kind of go with the flow. I mean, that's just the way it is. Number 3, you're going to realize, I mean, even if you complain about, different sidewalks in the U.S., in most cases, the sidewalks in the U.S. are continuous. And most times they are somewhat in decent condition. Or, we all know that, in the States, you can sue somebody if someone get hurt on the sidewalk that hasn't been repaired in a reasonable amount of time. Not overseas, you can go and see broken sidewalks, wires, things protruding from the sidewalks all of a sudden just stop and just drop, deep, there's no place for any, where you can just kind of walk down, especially if you have a wheelchair. I mean, I have another, thing I learned about that too, but just understand sidewalks are really rough. And just about every city I visited, I mean, except South Africa, I mean, somehow there seemed to be what I was used to. But other cities I've been to, they can be really, really rough. Another thing, you have to learn to appreciate the little things. That's number 4. We're so busy in our lives, we forget to appreciate the little things. When you travel, you start observing things you probably never paid attention to before. So just understand that. Number 6, you got to learn, just smile. With so many languages throughout the world, it's incredible that there is only one universal language, and that's the smile. No matter where you're from, who you are, and what language you speak, smiling is the same no matter who you are or where you are. Number 6, I understand a lot of these places, I mean, there's no hot water. Especially in South America and even parts of Mexico, hot water is not the norm. And the water can be really cold. You think, okay, it's so hot that you might appreciate just cool water. No, you don't, because some of these places are just. I mean, Mexico City, for instance, you may run into hot water, you may not, but Mexico City can be really cold, especially at night. So just understand, you're gonna run into a lot of places where there is no hot water, and that's the norm. Number 7, the weather. Again, that goes back into places that you just underestimate for weather. I mean, again, if you think South America everywhere is hot, no, it's not. Places like Bogota, Quito, Ecuador, places that I've been to, Bogota, Colombia, Quito, Ecuador, Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, South Africa. Those places get cold. Now, granted, they're not U.S. type cold, the extreme cold, but it's cold enough that you need a coat. So just understand, which brings me back to the next one. I mean, a lot of these places that are cold, there's no heat, and that's normal. I mean, Bogota, again, Nairobi. Well, Nairobi wasn't a problem, but there's some places, again, you're going to run into some city, there is no heat, daytime or nighttime. And then, of course, they use propane tanks, so sometimes you can't even use the heat from the propane because it's not even hot enough to warm things. So just understand, heat is not norm in a lot of these cities. The next one is no straws or lids in a lot of places. I mean, I remember being in Colombia, and I remember being in even parts of Brazil where you may go to a place and order from McDonald's, for instance, but you might not get a straw, and then in some cases you might not even get a lid. And especially if you decide to eat in or dine in. I just remember being in Brazil, in Rio, where I ordered something from McDonald's. I didn't get a straw. I didn't get a lid. They gave me this large cup, and with the sandwich and the fries on a tray, and I had to walk upstairs with it and hope no one bumps into me and knock over the tall soda that I got. So just understand, a lot of places now, you think they're doing it for, you assuming they may be doing it for environmental reason, but it's almost like weird. I mean, you see that, but it's not like, okay, but then you may see a lot of plastic bags and a lot of plastic bottles. So it's almost like, okay, what's the point? You know what I mean? If you're not going to be consistent throughout, why get rid of it? I mean, I understand straws actually is more, environmentally unfriendly than bottles, but to me, they're just as bad. I mean, if you're going to do one, just go ahead and do both of them. So the next one, number 11, a lot of times you can go into a fast food restaurant, you can be the only one in there. And you can be sitting there and waiting like, man, there's 10 people back there. Why is it taking so long to get a regular? I didn't make a special order. But sometimes they would take care of the deliveries first. I mean, deliveries are a big thing in a lot of these countries. So you might find motorcycles everywhere of, drivers, Uber drivers, or whoever making deliveries. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, that's the priority. Even though you're the only person in there and they can knock you out in no time. But they will sit there in front of you on a counter preparing bags and bags of food before you actually get your own food. So it's weird. It doesn't happen everywhere, but it happens enough that you notice it. Another thing, a lot of these countries, you have to learn to be just relaxed and be patient. If you don't have any patience, you're going to have a real problem. Well, you know what? If you don't have patience, you're going to learn to have patience, because it's going to take a while to get things. Again, that was a prime example. But sometimes you go into a line, the line doesn't seem to be moving. You go to the airport, I mentioned this before, the line doesn't seem to be moving, and it seems like they're not in a hurry to speed it up. It's not like all of a sudden they have a code when you're in a grocery store, they want to speed the lines up. You just sitting and be waiting. And you have to learn to pack your patience. I mean, you can't be in a hurry in a lot of these countries. Sometimes the buses, you have to just be sitting there just waiting. Again, some countries do better than others for speeding things up, but it's almost like we get to it when we get to it. So you have to really pack your patience.
Hello, how you doing?
And relax, because it may take a while to, in just about every country I've been to.
Where are you from?
U.S.
U.S.
Yes.
Chicago.
Drinkable water is
Washington,
not
D.C.,
the
the
norm in a
capital,
lot of these countries. I mean, even if you don't drink water in the U.S.,
appreciate
tap water, it is drinkable. And then think about it. I mean, at least if you don't drink it,
It's a
you still
beautiful
probably
area.
use
I
it
love the
to
water.
cook
It's beautiful,
with
beautiful.
and wash our food with. But a lot of times, that's not even safe enough to do that.
Oh,
Now, there's
no.
some
He just
cities
asked
in
that.
different
I'm not going
countries
to see
where
anything
they
today.
have drinkable water that you can use to
I'm just walking. I'm just
to
looking.
drink, and
I'll be here for a little while.
wash
So
our food. But a lot of
I get to
times,
explore.
drinkable water is not the norm. And if you type person
Okay,
like
then.
to
Take
get
it.
your 8 ounce, I mean, your
Right.
8 glasses, 8 ounces a day, and don't forget, even if you buy a big bottle, you know, you still need,
It's funny.
you know,
Normally
clean water
you
to wash your
see
food
posts.
off.
Well,
you
they
know,
got there
so
too, also.
just understand, drinkable water is not normal in a lot of places outside the U.S.
Yeah, they always take everybody to the prison to see the big
Wow,
turtles. So I
number
guess I will make sure I
14.
check it out
People,
before I leave here. Seems like
listen,
I'd rather wait
I
till it
talked about
rains
the
once.
holes in the
Because it never
sidewalk
rains.
and
Since I've
issues
been
like
here,
that.
if it rains, it seems like
But
no more than once
just
a day.
understand that a lot of these countries, it
So,
seemed like disability just didn't seem to have a right. I mean, you know, where in the U.S. you normally used to
All right,
seeing
so, yeah.
doors or ramp in front of stores or bathroom, extra wide bathroom for wheelchairs. Nah, you don't see that in a lot of places. I mean, you go in
Set
places like
grill,
Colombia
pizza.
where a lot of buildings
like
they
a
have
bus
steep stairs.
Station right here.
The sidewalk, again, there's no ramp
Well,
that leads you off the
transfer point, I
sidewalk.
guess.
They just drop.
A main
I mean-
major bus stop.
I mean,
I want to say this is. I think this
if
is
you're
Gandhi Square,
if you're disabled and have mobility issues in a lot of these countries,
which is probably like I
you
said,
pretty
it's a
much seem to
major
be
bus
stuck at home because a lot of these
transfer
places are not conforming to, you know, to make a compo for you to get around. So just
Pan around
understand
and show you
you
what it looks like
really
here.
should appreciate, you know, what we do have, even though it can cook better. But you know, just understand the rules and laws that we have in the U.S. to help people with mobility issues. A lot of number 15 overhead wires. Now, I've seen overhead wires issue in a lot of countries. I mean, even in the U.S., there's still places with a lot of overhead wires. But I don't think nothing beats Thailand. I mean, I was in
Statue of Gandhi
Thailand,
right there.
and I've seen so many overhead wires. It's like, wow, what are they? Electrical? Are they all telephone? I mean, it's so many. It's just can't imagine what happened if all of a
Gandhi
sudden
Mall right
there's
there.
an accident, and, you know, and there's a tall truck
I'm not
or
going in
something
there,
knocked down a pole and knocked down
at
those
the Carter
wires. I
Mall.
mean, they're just everywhere. Just hundreds of them, overhead wires,
Excuse me, carton.
especially in places like
Mall.
Thailand.
Center. I get it right.
You know, one of the things I
Convenience
always,
store.
you know, one of the things whenever I go somewhere, I always try to just a McDonald's or you know, American
right, let me,
based restaurant just to see if the food tastes the same.
When I get close
And
to
a lot
the
of
mall,
times
let me get you back.
they're cheaper, but sometimes not necessarily cheaper. It's really you get smaller sizes. So it may, you know, where I may pay $8 and something for a combo here in the U.S. or $9 for a combo here in the U.S. at a McDonald's. You know, I may be in Colombia and may pay $5 or $6, but when you really break it all down, I mean, everything is smaller. The burgers seem a little smaller. Obviously, you don't get as many fries in the same type combo, and the drink is obviously a lot smaller. So, and that may be a good thing to keep weight down, but just understand that it's cheaper, but it's not necessarily cheaper. It's just smaller. You know what I mean? But it is still a little cheaper. Depends on the exchange rate, but it's also smaller because, you know, a lot of places don't be just giving you a lot of food like they do in the U.S. You know, just remember also number 17, you can do anything you want. You know, travel changes you. I mean, it makes you more confident and independent. I mean, it teaches you how to solve problems, navigate language barriers, and get through hard times. That's one of the beautiful things about traveling. At least that's what I learned. Number 18, keys and locks and doors and automatic locks. I mean, it's just so different in a lot of countries. Sometimes you can go somewhere and they give you like 10 keys just to get into. I mean, it may be 10, but maybe 4 or 5. But it's a lot of keys just to get inside of a place. You may need a key to get inside the gate, then another key to get inside another gate, another key to get in, a different size key to get inside a door inside the gate. And then when you get to your unit, then there's 2 keys. One that's weird shape to open the top lock, and then there's a different key to open the bottom lock. Oh my God. Keys. You can get a lot of keys just from being in a different country. And that's the last thing you want to lose them, because they're not all shaped the same way. At least in the U.S., the keys are all the same size for the most part. For keys to get into a house. That's what I'm talking about. But in a lot of countries, you may have long keys, short keys. I mean, you may have all type of key just to get inside your house. I mean, so. When booking Airbnb, it's always smart to ask the host for the instruction before you leave. Now, a lot of time, I'll book an Airbnb, I'll be in a certain country, and then a lot of times you don't. Sometimes you get the instruction immediately, and sometimes you may not get into close to the date, the interest instruction. And sometimes you don't get it until you get there. But the problem is when you get there, you don't have Wi-Fi to check your phone, because you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't know where to go. Sometimes you don't have the address, so it's always been wise. I mean, I remember one situation I was in going to Colombia where I didn't get the instruction until I got to the house. The guy was supposed to meet me there, so I didn't really complain about it. But the only thing that worked, he had sent me the Wi-Fi instruction. I mean, the Wi-Fi information, which I thought, okay, why are you sending the Wi-Fi without the rest of it? But the Wi-Fi was given to me, so when I got close to the house, then he can go ahead and email the instruction, because I arrived at just in time. Sometimes you don't get the instruction until the time you're supposed to check in. You know how some hotel won't let you check in before 3. Sometimes you won't get instruction on how to get it to the Airbnb at least in the US, the key until 3 o'clock. And sometimes you arrive there early. I mean, I don't know why. They know you're coming. A lot of times they know where you're coming from because they ask you. But somehow they still don't want you to get an extra 10 or 15 minutes inside the place. So just understand and try to get that information as much as possible, and explain that you might not have communication while you're traveling. Smart to ask the host. I mentioned this before in my last thing, but I don't want to mention it again. Again, I always thought it was just better, and from my experience, just the better to do. If you're going to another country, if you're one of those type of people that's going from country to country, then it's just best to just kind of go straight to the airlines. It's easier. Everybody got their own rules. Everything is not the same. And if you can't go to the airlines, or you're having problems, because sometimes, having problem with credit cards, sometimes they don't take your credit card. I mean, maybe you want to book all your flights, on your, I don't know, with your American Express. But that airline site doesn't take American Express. But if there's an Expedia option, then I always try to book with Expedia. There's always those two. I mean, again, I don't try some of these places that I'm not familiar with, because again, you're not sure if that third party is going to get that information, and sometimes they don't pretty much charge you the full correct amount, and then you end up find out you have more problem once you get to the to the actual desk. So I just suggest you book directly with the airlines or use Expedia. Now, the thing that worked for me when I went to these different countries, and it may not make a difference because you look different than anyone else, but I try as much as possible to try to blend in as much as possible by dressing, especially if the place have a little diversity with people, different type people, where, I don't want to stand out. I try to be, I'm one of those type of people that like going with the grain instead of against the grain. When you go against the grain, and that applies even in the U.S., but definitely when you're in a foreign country, sometimes you're more noticeable. And then when you're more noticeable, then I think you may stand out a lot more for things to not be so positive. So, try as much as possible to kind of go with the grain and try to do what the locals do. And that goes to the, wearing wearables like watches and AirPods and jewelry. I just remember being in Medellin, Colombia, and automatically, I wore jeans all the time, which wasn't a problem, because, people wear jeans. So I had no problem. I didn't wear shorts too often. So I wore jeans. Again, I think I dressed like them for the most part. I didn't wear my AirPods because I realized at that time, when I first got there, a lot of people didn't have AirPods. Now, granted, it's not a problem now, but 3 years ago, there wasn't a lot of AirPods, and there weren't a lot of people wearing watches, especially Apple Watches. So all that thing, whenever I went certain places, I just put them in my pocket, so I at least have it. And especially when I went downtown, I just didn't wear it at all. Most of the time I just had on a hat, regular nondescript shirt, and jeans, just like everybody else. So, 23, try to get an online mailing address. I use Global Mail, but again, I travel a lot of places. Unless you go into a certain country and you plan on being there for a while, then it's hard to get mail. And again, I just used Global Mail. So whenever I had something, it was always going to that mailbox. And then I was able to get them to open it and scan it. And the only problem is if I had a card or something, that's the only issue. Trying to get a card, from, again, if you're going to be at one spot for a while, I'm pretty sure you can make arrangements to where you are to get that card. But me, I was always traveling and I didn't want to trust it a lot. So I didn't do a lot of things. I didn't even try having things sent overseas because I didn't want to be stuck in an area and waiting on something that may not show up and just kind of screw my plans up. So it never got to a point where I needed to stay somewhere longer than I wanted to because something happened and I needed some mail. Most time I just forward the mail. Whenever I go somewhere, I may have a friend in a different place and I may just fly nearby that place. Like for instance, if I had a bank card, I had my mailing, I had the bank card mailed to a friend's in a different city that I was flying to from coming overseas. And that just made it easy for me to just, book a flight, catch up with somebody and then, get what I need to do and go on to my next destination. Next thing, 24, health is the most important thing you have. We all take our health for granted at times. When you travel, you need to take extra care of your health, particularly if you're alone. In a foreign country, it's not always going to be easy to get understood, or maybe they don't have the right medication. So I didn't try to do anything silly, you know what I mean? I wasn't trying to be overly careful, but I didn't do anything like, okay, why are you doing this? You can get hurt, you know what I mean? And then what you going to do next? So again, I wasn't overly careful, but I just didn't do things that I probably would have done had I been in the States. That's just me, and it just kind of worked, to my advantage. And lastly, there's no place like home. I think travels offer a new perspective on home. For some, it helps you appreciate what you left behind, and for others, it may help you reveal that you truly belong somewhere else. So anyway, you can take that how you want it. I really enjoy myself with traveling. I still want to continue traveling, but I also want to kind of explore parts of the U.S. So, I'll be probably coming out another video soon on that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed these part 1 and part 2 of things I learned from traveling internationally. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and please click that notification bell. Again, I'm glad you're staying with me for those, especially stay to this end. So I will definitely see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.